Welcome to Every Dollar Counts with Josh and Jay, a shot of true serum for your investment and insurance questions. I'm Josh Knoll, the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jay Stubbs, the director of the Gulf Coast for First Protective. We are brought to you on the Gulf Coast Financial Advisors Podcast Network. Well, Jay, on this episode, folks are joining us for the round 2 of our little risk management 2-pack. On the previous episode, we discussed something that has been pretty prevalent, obviously, through 2020. Looks like it's going to bleed into 2021 a little longer than we all had hoped or anticipated, and that's the impact of COVID-19. Particularly in the last episode, we talked about what is that doing to the underwriting processes of life insurance, long-term care, and disability income protection. So if you all want to jump back and hear that first episode, please, once we have it out published, why don't you do so? Now, for this episode, Jay, we're gonna broaden that topic a little bit. We're going to talk about a broader risk management focus in that, you and I in our particular roles, me as the owner of an independent financial advisory practice, you serving advisors like me all along the Gulf Coast in your role with First Protective, COVID has, without a doubt, put a renewed focus on risk management. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, it has. And, there's thoughts and bad thoughts, good thoughts that come across people's minds and their household and their family and their loved ones, and they're thinking about all their stuff. And so now it's really about, let's do an assessment, if you will.
Well, what we're going to do, Jay, is, this stuff can get overwhelming, particularly how things have changed so dramatically, so quickly. So what we're going to do today is we're going to run through 7 steps that help you identify your areas of risk, particularly for something in the future, and kind of help you distinguish what is, what's urgent, what's important, what needs to be addressed now, what can be planned for in the beginning, particularly, taking the first step of protecting those that you love in their future and determining what specific risks you face, especially some of you business owners out there. So, Jay, but before we dive into all of that, let's have our friends from Sloth Racer kick us off. Jay, buddy, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing well. It's good to be back in studio in 2021 here at the end of January. And, it's just one of those things where you wanted to get back to some normalcy, and we've tried our best to do so, not only from our own personal perspectives and our family. We're back on the golf course. We're back in the basketball courts. We're back in school. Some of you listening or watching may not be in that situation. You may be virtual, and that's fine too. We've certainly learned a lot over the last year, soon to be a year, and all of this stuff going on. But things are good at the Stubbs household and in the Stubbs business world.
Yeah, you and I were sitting in this very studio about 11 months ago. It would have been mid to late February, and that was when it was really first starting to be part of the conversation. I remember that day we actually fist bumped. We didn't shake hands. We wiped some things down, and we thought it would just be a little blip and we'd move on with our lives.
We really did. So much for that.
So much for that. So let's deal with the reality that is now. Jay, what we're going to do, you're going to be carrying the load of this conversation. We're going to talk about the 7 key points a person needs to consider when they're looking at the risk management, what they need to protect, what is part of that equation. And hopefully what we'll accomplish here, and we're also going to have this listed out in our show notes, is we'll give you all a little bit of a roadmap to maybe handling some of these things. Again, particularly like you mentioned, Jay, some people have been impacted a little more severely than others in this situation. Not just some of the folks that have actually caught COVID, but some of the industries that have had dramatic changes. I mean, even you and I, we've been pretty fortunate. We've been able to function somewhat normally through this process.
Right.
But there has been a lot of things that changed, with the virtual meetings and the conferences that you and I would attend. Those have been out, right?
Yeah, absolutely, They have.
What I want to do, Jay, I want to jump to you first, and let's run through these quickly. The 7 points of that someone needs to consider when they're looking at the risk management strategy, when they're looking at what things should I protect.
Well, we're going to call this an audit, 7-point protection audit. How well are you and your family protected? There will be some business component there, but the objective is to do an audit, get an assessment, and once you've completed it, you're working with a financial professional like yourself, Josh, to address any issues or identify someone or some things that you need to fix, some things there may be a complete gap in. And it's simple to find out what the resources that you have available to you when you work with somebody like Josh. You can just ask him some questions and the team that he has available to him. But You asked about what are the 7. Let's give you the 7, and then we'll dive into them. So the 7-point protection audit, the first one is property. The first property one is going to be dealing with the things that you own. Think about your home. The second one is intent. Think about what do you want done with your stuff, specifically if you predecease, what are your loved ones going to have to deal with? The third one is your income. Audit on your income and how that is currently being spent.
Very important.
And how it needs to be protected. The fourth is retirement. Some of those listening or watching, retirement may be sooner than later. And for those listening or watching, it might be later than sooner. It just depends. But you still need to assess or audit your retirement plan. The fifth, this is a real big important one, healthcare.
Boom.
What's your healthcare plan? How are you going to pay for the expenses that you and your family need in the event of an accident or long-term situation, illness? For those specific that listen or watch, there is an audit for your business planning. So that's the 6th area. Business planning is very important when especially if you have a partner or you have an entity that you want to protect. We've got things that we can do in business protection planning. If you don't have a business, then that part of the assessment's not valid to you. But if you're ever thinking about getting into business for yourself, and there are a lot of people that maybe have been displaced because their jobs completely changed during 2020 and COVID pandemic.
I'd position it that probably unprecedented number of people that have been forced to develop their side hustle.
Oh, absolutely.
Have been forced to go 1099, maybe when they were W-2 historically. So yeah, I mean, if you're in that boat, then that business section definitely applies to you.
And then the 7th and final one, and this is really doesn't happen until you're later on in life, is legacy. Protecting your legacy. What's the plan for your stuff and your assets, especially if there's maybe an estate tax situation, or if there's grandchildren in the mix, or if there's charitable organizations. What's the legacy you want to leave? And so we have some audit questions specific around there. So those are the 7 points of protection audit, Josh. Property, intent, current income, retirement, healthcare, business, and legacy.
All right. Well, Jay, let's jump right into property then. So let's frame this as somebody has accumulated some assets. They've got the home. They have maybe some land. They've got financial assets. They've developed something that has some value outside of they're just being existing, if you will. So let's talk about what's a thing that we need to look at when we're auditing for protection on property.
Well, the first and foremost is going to be the home that we own or that we rent. Is it covered? Does it have the appropriate amount of insurance coverage, inclusive of flood insurance if you're in an area that qualifies? Now, I'm not a property and casualty insurance agent specialist, neither are you, but we know plenty of them.
Yes, we do.
But the first thing we want to do is make sure our property is protected. Any of our fun stuff. You've got a boat. I've got a Sea-Doo Wave Runner. We want to make sure that those properties are protected, and the liability that comes with those. Heaven forbid something should happen with an accident on somebody on one of those. Then we think about our jewelry, our heirlooms, maybe works of art, maybe some coins or things that you valuables and collect. Is that all protected? And where is it located for the protection plan? I've got 4 kids, one of them soon to be a teenage driver. We want to make sure our overall general liability is covered, and people think about umbrella policies. And then if you travel for business and you have a business, you want to make sure that the business obviously is protected. That's a commercial property insurance issue. That's kind of outside our wheelhouse on a day-to-day basis, but we know plenty of people who are specialists in that world. And then today, more now than ever, really came afoot, I guess, over the last 5 years, is your identity.
Right.
Protecting your identity,
That's
making sure your online presence and making sure all your identity is protected. Those are some specific areas that you need to speak with a specialist. Again, you and I are not specialists in that market, but your property, you can speak with that property and casualty agent or agency in your local market. And if you need a referral to one, you just simply got to let Josh know or let me know.
Well, and you're correct. We are not property and casualty agents, but we also both, me on the retail side, consumer facing, deal with financial plans with folks. You in your role serving advisors like me along the Gulf Coast, you are often brought in to consult on financial plans. And honestly, if you don't have some of the property things buttoned up, then you don't have a comprehensive, complete financial plan.
That's right.
Right. All right, let's jump to number 2. This one's really interests me, intent.
Yeah, so intent is, when was the last time you updated your will? And for some people, they might be like, what will? make sure you've got a will and you've got your plans in place. Do you have a healthcare directive? Meaning what happens if something happens to me health-wise and I'm incapacitated and I can't make decisions? If I'm married, do I have a power of attorney? If I'm not married, do I have a power of attorney for somebody that can help me make those decisions and take care of some of those financial matters when I might be in the hospital in a coma, things like that. Also, under intent is when the last time you updated the beneficiaries of all your financial accounts. Think the beneficiary on your 401k, your IRA, any of the vehicles that you own. You can assign beneficiaries to those, and certainly your life insurance policies. We've talked about that at length in the previous episode. You want to make sure that the proper beneficiary, both primary and contingent, are there. And then also under intent is, have you communicated to your heirs what your plans are in writing, or in some cases, some people do it by video.
Right.
You can upload that thing to the cloud and everybody knows what the plan is, and you give them directions on how to go watch it after you've gone on to the next level of your life.
Well, and I think makes it helpful, again, so just as we're not property and casualty agents, we're also not attorneys. So, you and I do not prepare, draft, or implement wills. However, they're part of our multiple conversations we have with our financial planning clients. And, my opinion has been and always will be, sometimes it's more comfortable if you have a disinterested third party at the table helping you to have these conversations. Because quite honestly, Jay, with intent, sometimes the conversations are uncomfortable.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Right. So very good. All right. So the next one, number 3, Jay, is current income. And now I'm gonna use my reference point when I talk to folks about disability income.
Also, life insurance. Current income also has a life insurance component there.
So what I do is I say, just imagine yourself as an ATM that's stored somewhere in your house. You got an ATM machine in a closet in your home. I used to say basement back in Missouri, but there's no basements down here on the coast. But you got an ATM, and you rely every month or every week or every 2 weeks, you go to the ATM, and it automatically spits out a certain amount of money that you used to live your life. Well, what would you do if you came home someday and that ATM was either damaged or destroyed? Who's going to replace that producer of money? And that's where I'm going to kick it back to you. That's where disability and life insurance comes in to protect that stream of money.
That's right. Under current income protection, that third component of the audit, if something happens to you, will your family have enough income to cover their bills, including the mortgage, maybe tuition, for the next 5 to 7 years? And do you and your spouse have enough life insurance to replace the income that they bring into the household should they predecease you? And it's important to review those policies. It's important to make sure that they still cover all the needs that you have. And you also need to ask yourself, do I have any debt that I need to pay off? Don't want to leave that hanging in the balance. Don't want to leave that to my spouse or my children. Do I have any? If I'm a student, do I have any student loan debt that may or may not be forgiven? I don't know the rules or what's going to happen with that. This is unique too. Do I have a special needs child?
Right.
Do I have an aging parent? Do I need to make sure that they have some provisions and make a plan for them? And then, managing the income or the monies that go to my heirs, that's very important. And then, of course, if I become ill or disabled myself, I want to protect my income for a long period of time. So that if I can't do my primary job function, I've got a disability plan in place that's going to pay me at least until I'm age 65 years old.
Right. So the plan of hoping that your last check bounces out the door, that's not really the plan.
No, not a good plan.
Not the plan.
Not a good plan.
Well, and that leads us into number 4, Jay, retirement. Let's just touch briefly on, everybody knows that, or should know, hey, obviously there's Social Security, there's all the issues surrounding that. Is it going to be there, not going to be there? We're not going to dive into that part of the conversation. You can form your own opinion. I don't think anybody really knows how that will play out. But I think a prudent person would say, hey, I need to have an additional bucket of money outside of any potential government or lack thereof assistance when I retire and no longer am producing a wage. So let's talk about retirement on the audit side.
Yeah, so we want to assess what we have. Have we saved any money for that express purpose? Where have we saved it, whether it might be in a 401k or some sort of IRA? And then where do I have any other savings or any other assets that I'm planning to tap into down the road? You might want to evaluate the tax situation versus today versus maybe 10, 15, 20, or even 30 years from now. What do we expect that to look like? Have I completed a plan?
Right.
Do I need to sit down and complete a plan and see what I have and make that assessment and make that determination of what do I need to contribute X amount of dollars and where do I need to put them. So without going into great detail, I think everyone needs to have some sort of retirement audit as it relates to their planning for the express purposes of, being able to go to wherever you want to spend your retirement, whether it's in the mountains or at the beach or at the house, what you do, the things you want to do with your family and your loved ones, or work in those organizations that you like to serve, volunteer, whether it's your church or any other nonprofit associations. Make sure your retirement plan is in place.
All right, so number 5, this is a big one. I mean, this was always big, right? But particularly this last year with COVID, and then I would even stretch out a little bit more, particularly with the changes we've seen in the healthcare insurance industry over the last handful of years, the difference in costs, networks, and things like that. So number 5 is healthcare. What type of audit are we looking at on that?
So first and foremost in healthcare, just when we talked about intent, we talked about the will and the healthcare directive. We also want to make sure we have a living will. That's an important thing that you would do with an attorney. But also, do you have family history that you need to be worried about? Do you have a mom or a dad that had any cardiac issues or any stroke or diabetic issues? Because sometimes those are genetically predisposed to you and your future generations. And what types of health services are you eligible for today through your employer or not available to you? And what gaps in health coverage do you have? Do you need to have an assessment for that? And then you also need to make sure that you're determining what assets you would use, if any, that if you had to pay long-term care expenses when you're maybe seriously disabled at an earlier age, or maybe during your retirement years, you can't do 2 of 6 activities of daily living, you need to make sure that the healthcare expenses related during those timeframes can be cared for. And if either you or a spouse needs long-term care, what's your plan for that surviving spouse to still have enough income in retirement should you predecease that spouse? So lots of things in the healthcare world. It really brought to light during COVID underlying health conditions.
Right.
People found out that they had something that they may not have known about.
Right.
And they found that out when they were diagnosed with COVID. But also staying in good health, doing the things you need to do for an active lifestyle, eating healthy, things like that, all part of that audit.
Well, and they also, too, Jay, I think they learned that, not that I want to make sure I'm careful with how I say this, because we have wonderful people. We have clients that work in long-term care facilities, extended health care facilities. But I think a majority of people realize, oh, crap, I think I'd like to have an option to stay home if I ever get to that point.
That's right. And that we've really seen that in the news where loved ones weren't able to go and visit their loved ones in an assisted living facility or a nursing home. And they're starting to realize that's not a plan that I like.
Right.
So maybe I need a plan that's going to allow for me to be home during my retirement years should I need a long-term care situation come up.
Perfect.
And that's where they need to speak with somebody like you or me and have a conversation about that.
Absolutely. All right, number 6 is business. Now I'm gonna cheat a little bit. For those of y'all listening to this episode, if you will do yourself a favor, if you're a business owner, self-employed person, entrepreneur, high-level executive, whatever it may be, if you're in a position of decision-making authority over your particular business, go back and listen to our BOSS series, Business Owner Strategies and Solutions. In one of those episodes, we talk about a key topic of this as you're looking at your audit, and that is succession planning. What happens to my business if I'm not there, or I'm incapacitated, or I just want to step away? So, Jay, what do you think about what's a couple of things we look at with business planning?
Well, business planning, like you just mentioned, we want to what's that succession strategy. But when's the last time you evaluated and placed a value on the business, and that we use that for the determination of the buy-sell agreement? What's the succession plan to, maybe if I own a business with you, we need to have a buy-sell agreement in place, and we can't execute that. Technically, we can't execute it without a value assigned to the business that we share. And what would happen if we have any key people within our business, something happened to them, whether it's death or disability, and would that business survive without them? Would that business survive without a key partner? So we need to think about that in our business audit. And do we have insurance or income that we need to protect for, like I said, on the key people, but also ourselves?
Right.
All right. So we need to make sure that that's taken care of. And then to make sure if you do have a succession plan or an operational agreement or a buy-sell agreement, that the triggers for those items are updated. You want to review that buy-sell on a periodic basis. So just when you do your business audit, if you own a business or if you're in partnership with somebody, just make sure you're asking yourselves all the right questions, or get together with a professional like yourself or me and make sure that those questions are getting answered.
And definitely jump back in our catalog. Check out that BOSS series. There's a lot of topics related to that. And then, Jay, the last one, number 7, this is the fun one. A lot of times, as you mentioned earlier in the intro, typically you're starting to think about these things as you're getting, children, grandchildren. You're starting to realize, hey, I've got a legacy that I'm passing on to these folks. What does that look like? How does that work? This is, in my opinion, a lot of fun. We have clients that have done a great job of running their life, running their assets, running, just really have everything, pretty much buttoned up. And now they can think about what happens when I'm gone. What legacy am I leaving behind?
That's right. So the number one thing there is the will. We want to make sure when's the last time you updated that. We've mentioned it. When's the last time you updated the beneficiaries on your documents and your plans and your insurance policies and your 401k and your IRA? We'd already mentioned that. But do your loved ones know how to access all your important documents and maybe the passwords to some of your websites for some of the stuff you've got? Is there a plan out there for them to know how to log into your Facebook account, your LinkedIn, and your Instagram and whatever else, your streaming services, Disney Plus and YouTube TV and Hulu and everything else? So there's actually people need to have a plan for that.
Absolutely.
What assets do you have that are taxable versus tax deferred? That's a plan. You sit down with a professional or a tax attorney or an estate planning attorney, and how will that impact your overall monies that you leave to your generation coming up, whether it's your children or your grandchildren. Then a lot of times people want to look at estate equalization, especially for their kids. Want to make sure that if I have 2, 3, 4 kids that I want everybody to be equal. So then there needs to be an assessment of do I have an equalization plan in place? Do any of my children or grandchildren or any other loved ones have a special need that requires additional work, or maybe a special policy in place held inside of a special needs trust? And do I have a legacy that I'm going to leave to a charity or a 501c3? Think about a church or a school or any other favorite organization that you like to support throughout the years. You can make a plan in place for that and leave a good legacy. So again, lots of stuff to dive into in the 7-point protection audit, Josh. But at the end of the day, if you perform this audit and do it on a consistent and regular basis, you'll feel much better about your overall financial situation and some of the risks that you need to take care of.
Totally agree. So those 7 items were property, intent, current income, retirement, healthcare, business, and legacy. And you can accomplish a significant chunk of this, maybe all of it, Jay, with a comprehensive financial plan. I always tell everybody, you in today's technology world, can you go out there and find your own free financial plan? Sure, absolutely you can. It's kind of the equivalent of going to the gym and working out by yourself. For some people, that's all they need. They've got the discipline, they've got the knowledge, they've got the know-how, they've got the self-motivation, they've got the encouragement to get great results from doing that. But if you're someone that feels like you would do a little bit better if you had someone that was there helping you with the roadmap, helping you with accountability, and honestly, as important as anything, helping you with encouragement, because some of this stuff is hard, right?
It is.
Then maybe reach out to a qualified financial professional. So, all right, Jake, well, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. You got anything last thing to say?
When you start thinking about these 7, the only thing I'll suggest that you do is prioritize the 7. If you think one area of concern is more important than the other, and then prioritize those, and then you can work with a professional to assign the tasks that need to be accomplished within that.
Very good.
It's a real simple process to complete the audit and then take action on what you find.
Well, and the cool thing is once you gather this information, actually you start running downhill pretty quick, right? It seems like a lot, but once you get it all in one pile, it really starts working. So listeners, if you think this topic applies to you, we can help. You can reach out to us, start a conversation by calling 251-327-2124. Leave a message there if you don't reach anybody. Plus, you can visit gulfcoastfa.com. That's FA as in financial advisor. While you're there, you can check out all the other content, all of our podcasts. You can actually make an appointment to speak to an advisor. Also, while you're there, if you don't mind, like and share the show. We appreciate all the listeners we have, all the downloads that we see. And then to all you independent and semi-independent advisors and agents out there listening and seeing the value that a Jay Stubbs could bring to your practice, you can find more information about him at jaystubbs.com. That's JAYSTUBBS.com. All right, brother, another show in the can. Many thanks to our producer, Johnny Gwynn of Deep Fried Studios. Thanks to you always as co-host, and a huge shout out to all of you all that have joined Jay and I on this journey, and to those of you that are joining us now. Do me a favor, please subscribe on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And while you're there, you would be doing us a huge favor if you would rate and review the show. It helps other listeners like you find us. Lastly, you like the show music? Go check out slothracerband.com. That's slothracerband.com. And they're going to take us home now. This has been Every Dollar Counts with Josh and Jay. If Advisory services offered through Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, PCIA, a federally registered investment advisor. PCIA, doing business as Prime Capital Wealth Management, PCWM, and Qualified Plan Advisors, QPA. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is independent of Prime Capital Advisors. Information presented is for educational purposes only, is not an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. All investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, be sure to consult a tax professional before implementing any tax or investment strategies.